Welcome to episode 41 of America in Crisis, Breaking the Cycle of Addiction. My name is David Hunt and I am your host. Please set your DVRs to record. This show could save your child's life. We will start with an update from the CDC. From the years August 2023 through August 2024, there were 89,740 overdose deaths across the country. Today's guest is Mackenzie Dezieck. Mackenzie is Woburn's new substance abuse and mental health coordinator. Mackenzie took over for Rick Jolly, who was a longtime police officer and then found himself leading Woburn's drug program until his retirement. Mackenzie has a long history in the pharmacological industry and was a guest on my show in 2019. Mackenzie Dezieck is a mental health and substance use clinician with a specialty in crisis response services. She has developed and implemented several clinical programs within police departments across the state, including Revere, Concord, and Lowell. Mackenzie is passionate in her work integrating jail diversion and harm reduction programs into communities with an underlying goal of preventing individuals from becoming involved in the legal system who may just benefit and rehabilitate with mental health and/or substance use support instead. Mackenzie holds a master's in rehabilitation counseling from Assumption College and is a licensed rehabilitation counselor. Mackenzie, welcome to my show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start by getting to know you a little bit as a person. Where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Andover, so in the North Shore.
Oh, pretty local girl.
Yes.
And where did you attend your school?
Well, I went to Andover High School, and then for my undergrad, I went to Roger Williams down in Rhode Island, and got my master's at Assumptions in Worcester.
Great. And do you have a family?
Yeah.
Is it just you? Okay.
Yes.
It's not just you.
It's not just me. I live with my husband, Kevin, and we just had our first baby, Jamie, who's 9 months old now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What experience do you have in the pharmacology? I know I interviewed you earlier many years ago when you were working with Frank.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that for people that didn't see the show?
So in 2019 you interviewed me when I was working with the Bedford Police Department, and Frank from the pharmaceutical school in Boston and I were working on a program related to safe drug disposal. And we had these pouches that are actually something that we've been working on currently in Woburn that help kind of rid substance, medications safely using the pouches. So I believe that was why we came on, and it was about awareness of safe drug disposal.
You donated 100 bags to the city of Woburn. We gave them out at the Festival on the Common one year.
Yes, and it's actually something that I have brought to Woburn when I started too, as sort of a pilot program too, and it's been a huge success so far.
Oh, definitely. No more happy fish.
No more happy fish, yep.
For people that don't know what that means, a lot of us would just dump your unused drugs down the sink, which end up into the sewer system, which end up getting filtered and going back into drinking water. Unfortunately, some of the filtering system doesn't take all the drugs out. So it ends up in the fish, it ends up in us, and if you get antibiotics, fish don't need antibiotics. Not to mention the other drugs that don't get filtered through. So these bags are a great program that they had. And to donate 100 of them to the city was just fantastic. Older people that don't use the drugs anymore, they want to be responsible, but where do you put them? You can't go down the sink. You don't want to put them in the trash barrel, because kids could go through, squirrels could go through, and it just creates a mess. So again, thank you for that, for putting on that program for us.
Yeah,
It was very, very successful. Now we talk about benefits of rehabilitation over punishment. A lot of people say, hey, it's drugs, punish them, they shouldn't be using the damn stuff. Why is rehabilitation so much more than just throwing them in a cell and punishing them?
Well, there's a variety of reasons why rehabilitation is important. It reduces recidivism, right? If you start treating the key issue rather than just punishing for the behavior, then ideally the behavior won't be repeated, right? So giving somebody treatment will allow them to work at those root issues rather than just going back and using once again. In terms of cost effectiveness, sending somebody to prison in the long run costs way more than sending somebody to a rehabilitation program, or even if you go break it down, ambulance costs, lockup costs, court costs, all of those costs add up to quite a bit of money. Whereas if somebody goes and gets treatment, that's not the tax money, that's not other costs that are, the hospital bills, things like that. Public safety is another reason, right? Somebody who receives treatment and ideally is successful and is in remission with their mental health or with their substance use, in long run is no longer going to take police resources. Police aren't going to be responding to their house or trying to support them if they're doing something erratic on the streets. It promotes social integration, so instead of locking somebody up for an issue related to substance use, it is connecting them to a community that can be supportive. And then once again, getting them out in the community and rebuilding their life if that's what they need to do, getting a job, living with their family, with their loved one, with their supportive community, that is gonna be much more valuable for them rather than spending time in prison where, to be honest, you can still get the substances or you're not gonna get the support that you need. So, rehabilitation is something that's going to have longer lasting effects than, going to prison.
So basically punishment is a temporary thing because it locks them away. They're not getting any treatment. 6 months, 9 months, they'll be out. Nothing's changed. They'll go back out to doing what they were doing.
Yeah, right. And rehabilitation ideally will break the cycle of crime. It gives them the opportunity to become healthy, to seek out the supports that they need, and that will in turn ideally support them in making better decisions when it comes to substances.
Now, if I had gone to jail, hypothetically, for a drug issue, and I'm in there and I came in on drugs, where does it start? What would you guys do for me? I mean, I know there are multiple programs, but you can just touch on.
So if
I walked in, I was arrested for either selling or having drugs, they say, do you use? I said, yep, I use X, Y, Z. And where would you start with me? You going to throw me in a cell, or what type of programs would I anticipate?
Well, if you're having a run-in with the police, it depends on what that nature of that run-in with the police, right? Because rehabilitation is valuable, but if there's a criminal act, that needs to be addressed by police. However, if it comes to me, it's usually somebody who can be diverted from legal action or getting involved with the court system. The first thing that I would ask you is, are you willing to accept help? Are you interested in getting some sort of support service? Because in the end, I can't force anybody to seek treatment or to accept services. So if somebody's willing to learn about their options, that's where we would start. And then it depends on kind of where they're at with their substance use. If it's somebody who needs a detox program, then we would look into getting them into a detox program. There's different levels of services that somebody could benefit from residential to outpatient. There's intensive outpatient programming, there's partial programs, and that needs assessment is really something that we do during that initial conversation with the person.
My big issue is people don't know about any of this. I mean, they think, okay, I'm going to get arrested, I took drugs, or at least I'm going to the police department to turn myself in before I hurt somebody. I don't even know that this stuff is available in prison. They think, oh my God, it's going to be a punishment, I'm going to get locked up 23 hours a day. I mean, why is this not out there that the general public or people that need it know, hey, if I go to jail, they're going to offer me something, I have this chance of rehabilitation.
I mean, accessibility is a major obstacle for substance use treatment and mental health treatment. And if you ask my opinion, I think that kind of stems from the stigma around it. Yeah. People don't talk about it, right? You see somebody who broke their wrist last week, you're going to say, hey, how's that recovery going? Yeah. See somebody who is in recovery for substance use or in recovery for their mental health, asking about it doesn't come as naturally. And I think that kind of is the pattern that you see across accessing services, right? You don't know what to look into because it's not public knowledge and it's difficult to navigate. The system has many flaws, and if you don't know how to navigate it and you're in crisis, then it's going to be completely overwhelming.
And you're trying to hide it. You don't want to go to people for help. Say, even kids, hey, mom, dad, I started smoking pot. I'm hooked on this stuff. Or hey, I started smoking pot, and now they're doing another drug.
Yeah, there's a sense of shame that comes with it. There's a sense that it's a character flaw, and that's what, you know, my mission is, to kind of deflate that stigma and make it, you know, something empowering. That seeking treatment is something to be proud of. Being in remission is something to be proud of, and getting there is something that I can support people in doing.
That's great that they do have options. Now, you came on board as basically the head honcho at drugs. It's a nice way of looking at you. I know you've got a huge experience, which is amazing that you're bringing this to the city of Woburn. What are some of your plans then in the future for the city? And you can take all the time you want on this.
Yeah, so I have...
Remember, we close at 5.
Okay, we got it. Well, so I have a bunch of programs in the pipeline that I'm excited to talk about. So, you know, one of the things that's coming up is we have a Narcan training. So it's an overdose and prevention and naloxone training that we actually already did one of, and we had a really good success with that. We had a good turnout. So we're going to be doing a second one May 15th from 5:30 to 6:30 at the new Community Resource Center, which is at the Cummings Office Park. And that is free for everybody, and everyone's going to learn how to recognize an overdose, to understand risk factors of addiction and overdose, and everyone's going to walk away with Narcan, with some fentanyl testing strips, and, you know, just some other goodies that that you can keep in the house. And, you know, it's kind of like having a first aid kit. Another program that we have coming up is called Minding Your Mind. This program is aimed at parents of middle and high school students, and it's really to support parents in supporting their kids as they manage with the stress of life. So that might be finals, that might be school, that might be the social expectations of kids this age. Again, this program is free for Woburn parents, and it will be held at the Community Resource Center. This is May 1st from 5:30 to 6:30 at the same place at East Cummings Park. And the speaker here is a psychologist who has a lot of experience discussing anxiety in our youth. And so this is just a really fantastic program for parents who want to learn a little bit more about what are the best ways to approach their kids if they sense that something is causing them anxiety, or if they, you know, are just the daily stressors of youth lives. The big program that we have coming up is on June 9th, on June 8th. On June 8th, it's a Sunday, is the Live Free Fun Run and Festival. So this will start with a 2.5 mile fun run / walk that is optional. And then it will start and end at Ice House Park at Horn Pond in Woburn. And that's when the festival will begin. So there'll be food trucks, there'll be a DJ, giveaways, there'll be speakers, there'll be raffles, face painting. So it'll be a really good time and a really nice summer event. But there will also be several booths of different providers. And when I say providers, I mean substance use agencies, addiction support services, mental health services, from within Woburn and from towns surrounding Woburn, but all local providers. And this event's going to be fantastic. You can learn about these different services. You can learn about who's offering these services. There'll be giveaways and swag from each provider. But in the end, it's really going to empower the idea of seeking support and the idea of seeking these support services. And that's kind of the main goal with this event, is to spread awareness, to support the idea of empowerment of seeking support, and and connecting people to these services should they need one, or should they know that somebody in their lives might benefit from one.
Question on that, just to make it clear.
Yes.
I see the run starts at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
What if I don't want to run 2.5 miles? Can the general public just come
Absolutely.
and take advantage without
Yes.
you're not going to make us work and run now?
No, the run is optional. It's, like I said, it could be a walk, or you don't even have to. You can still come to the festival. The run and the walk are free, and the festival is also free. So there's no there's no payment options. The only reason why there's a registration link is because everybody who runs gets a t-shirt. So you need to put in what t-shirt you're looking for and what size you're looking for. But other than that, it'll be a really fun event, and everyone should come.
Now, for people who know me out there, for one thing only, food trucks. So, yes, people, you're going to have to eat anyway, so I get a great idea. You have to eat lunch anyway. So why don't you come down to the festival, see what's going on, and they get food trucks there. So obviously now you have a place to eat. I'm sure it's going to be very cost effective for our people. It's not going to be gouging you. It's not that type of fare. So come on down. You got to eat lunch anyway, so you might as well come down and do a good thing.
And Horn Pond is beautiful. It's a great way to spend your Sunday afternoon.
So what else do you have coming up in Woburn? With the future Woburn, other than these programs, what do you see happening in Woburn?
So one of the things that I'm most excited about is talking to Woburn citizens, right? I come from a strong background of doing this sort of work, but I've worked in cities like Lowell, and I've worked in cities like Revere, Massachusetts, and that's quite a different population and a different city than what Woburn is. So my goal now is to start talking to the people of Woburn. What are you seeing? What are some of the challenges that Woburn faces? What are some of the gaps in services, gaps in supports? And so I hope to kind of make a survey that people can access and, you know, maybe scan on their phones to provide some information. But I also want to start meeting people. I want to do some one-on-one not case studies. I want to do some open forums, open conversations with people, go in the schools, talk to students, talk to teachers, you know, just make myself accessible so that I can hear what the community is looking for and what are some of the issues that do need to be addressed. So I encourage people to keep an eye out for that because I do want to hear from you.
Okay, quick question. You obviously worked in several cities, Bedford, Revere, was Concord, I think?
Yes, yep.
See, I remember.
Yeah, good memory.
Okay. So anyway, Revere obviously is a tougher town than Woburn. Different type of drugs altogether. What type of drugs are we seeing in Woburn, the common ones, the problem? Is it marijuana? Is it a gateway drug? Or are they into the hard stuff?
You know, we're seeing a lot of drinking, a lot of underage drinking, and a lot of abuse of alcohol. Vaping is obviously an issue, I think, across the country right now for our youth. And one of the big things now, and there's a kind of a big issue going on in the Chelmsford Lowell area with what we call the gas station gummies.
Yeah.
So the legal substances that you can buy at a gas station or at a head shop or at a smoke shop that claim to be, you know, synthetic marijuana or synthetic mushrooms or, you know, kratom, where people are taking these and thinking that they're safe and they're not. And people are having really bad reactions to them. They're ending up in the hospital. And unfortunately, there's kids who are dying and losing their lives because they're taking these things that they assume are safe because you can buy them at stores and they end up not being safe because they're not monitored, right? They're not FDA approved. We have no idea what's in them. And that's super scary.
The part that aggravates me was the big scam that happened years ago. I was with another organization. They came to us for support for the vaping and said it's better than cigarettes. It'll let people wean themselves off of cigarettes and smoking, less lung cancer, and it's a way to get off of the drug, titrate your way down, and in no time you'll be off of nicotine. It's a way to stop the addiction. And what happens now? Kids and everybody else that have never been smoking in their lives said, oh, I can calm down with nicotine. It's a safer way than smoking. I'm going to pick it up. And more people picked up vaping than if they picked up a cigarette and choked to death on the damn thing and said, hey, this is horrible. This tastes horrible. I'm choking. What do I want to put this in my lungs for? But vaping with the new flavors, with the Orange Crush and Tutti Frutti. Don't tell me those are marketing to the big construction man that's 300 pounds. You're not marketing Tutti Frutti to a big construction worker. You're marketing those to the kids who are going to end up with them one way or the other, either legal or their friend that's 21 that buys it for them. And that's one way to hook people. And that was the biggest thing that ticks me off, something that was supposed to be out to wean people off of smoking turned out to be a problem in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell that these vapes are being targeted at youth because they have them shaped like highlighters. Like sometimes you can't even tell that they're vapes. They look like pens. They look like highlighters. They look like
flash drives,
flashlights. And you're right, the flavors, which I think are now outlawed in Massachusetts. You can't have flavors, but people still get them. You can get them at, go up to New Hampshire. There's stores that aren't abiding by the rules. And that's definitely targeted towards the youth. Like you said, they're perceived as being safer, but nobody actually knows that. There's not super longitudinal studies done that are measuring what, the long-term effects of these vapes. And then, youth who are not legally allowed to be purchasing nicotine or marijuana are finding them online, which is even scarier because you're getting them from these unmonitored stores that are maybe international, that you're not getting them from anywhere that is monitored, that FDA approved. And so it's really dangerous because you don't know what you're inhaling, and these kids don't know what they're inhaling, but because they're not buying them, the legal way, they kind of just are hoping that it works out for them.
I might even surprise you right now with this statement. Where did the word vaping come from? Why was it called vaping? Because it was made with water vapor. And what the water vapor ended up doing, that wasn't as bad, but now they're using oils to get the flavors in there. So now the oil, if you ever go up above your stove, wipe your hand up where that filter is and get, what's that? That's all oil vapor. Well, guess what? That's what's going into your lungs.
Yeah.
Now, I know this is an obvious question, but for people that don't watch the show or don't read anything, why is it so important to catch the kids doing these drugs at an early age? The earlier, the better. What is the importance of this?
Yeah, so early intervention is super important because there's data that shows that substance use and mental health issues that develop in youth only exacerbates further and further throughout their lifetime if it's not treated at a young age. Earlier intervention is important because it will prevent the secondary effects of somebody who is struggling with mental health or substance use issues. And when I say secondary effects, I mean, somebody who's struggling with mental health or substance use might start missing school, might start missing work, might stop doing sort of the things that they're used to be doing because of what they're struggling with, right? And so that in turn means their grades are dropping, they're not getting into college, their relationships are struggling. So these are the secondary effects that are really going to impact somebody's life. Now, if you intervene early and in a supportive way, hopefully you're helping avoid those secondary effects. You're getting their youth the support that they need, but you're also teaching them that there are supports out there, and it's not a one-size-fits-all support. There might be something that works for one person that doesn't work for another person, but intervening early and sharing the information with them, ideally and hopefully will show that there is something that will work for them.
And of course, the child's brain is still developing up until 25.
Yes.
If somebody my age was to take a drug, it might not affect me and my brain as much as it's going to affect a child. And they don't realize this. Remember, kids are impervious to everything. They're invincible. Doesn't matter what you do, we're invincible. It can't happen to us.
Yeah. I think that a lot of kids say, oh, it's just a little weed or it's just some nicotine, and they don't think that it's going to impact them because it's not what they would consider a hard drug. But like you said, brains are still developing until age 25, and it can impact your memory, it can impact your moods, it can impact your ability to maintain energy or information. So there's all these impacts that you don't think about when you're in the moment that do have long-term lasting effects.
Now, because of the safe, non-addictive opioids that came out onto the market, the U.S. experienced one of the largest opioid settlements in history against multiple pharmaceutical companies, one of them being Purdue. That's Purdue Pharmaceuticals, not the people that make the chicken, but different Purdue. So we had the largest settlement in history. I think it was $192 million, $1 billion. Massachusetts cities and towns got a share of, was it 900 million, with 42 million already distributed throughout Massachusetts. What is Woburn doing with its share of the money?
Yeah, so one of Mayor Concannon's initiatives when he became mayor was to kind of address the gap in services that existed in Woburn. So, prior to me starting in Woburn and between me and Rick Jolly's, service, there wasn't a lot of services out there addressing mental health and substance use. So, hiring somebody for my position, the mental health and substance use coordinator, was one of the mayor's initiatives in being hired, and I'm tasked with kind of addressing that gap. So Woburn's using that money to hire somebody like me to come in and support the city, and then use that money to create programming around prevention, around education, and around intervention. And so when I say prevention, I mean, programming that teaches about, the effects, the consequences of substance use, maintaining sobriety, but also, doing what you need to do to support your own mental health and promote your mental health. Education is both for youth and adults. Doing programming like assemblies, like the Minding Your Mind program that's kind of addressing an issue before something happens. And then, of course, intervention is after there's an incident or after somebody starts struggling with their mental health or substance use, being able to come in and support that person. So with the money that we're getting from the opioid settlement funds, we are doing all the programming like I mentioned before. And then hopefully we'll do something that is more major, and that is why I'm hoping to talk to the community a little bit more and learn about really what are the specific needs of Woburn, and complete a really in-depth needs analysis for our city, so that I really can have the opportunity to access the city's input, because this is our city, it's not my city, and I want to do what we all believe is important and what needs to be addressed. So. More to come on that.
And there was a couple of catches with the settlement. And of course, you have to thank Mayor Mike Mackenzie and the city council for being responsible. But one of the conditions was you had to use the money. And our mayor and council, obviously by hiring Mackenzie and putting multiple programs on the table, the money from the settlement is being used the way it was designated to. And unfortunately, out of the 342 communities in Massachusetts, many of them never used the money, and now it's getting clawed back. It just sat in an account, which is a shame. There was money that could have been used for drug and health programs, and unfortunately it was not used. So we have to thank our mayor for doing it on time and not just putting something quick together to use the money. He thought it out, hired Mackenzie, has programs in the works, and that's very responsible. So we do have to thank our mayor for having the foresight to do that. Now, a little more about you. I notice you are a mental health coordinator. What is your role? What is one? And how can this help the city?
Yeah, so just like I have a background in supporting individuals that struggle with addiction, I also have a background in supporting individuals with mental health diagnoses. So my role is, half addiction, half behavioral health, but I would say that they do go hand in hand. Somebody who's struggling with addiction is likely struggling with something related to their mental health. So what that looks like in terms of my services is, just like I might get somebody into an addiction service like detox, like a rehabilitation program, like a residential program, I also do the same thing for mental health services. So somebody might need to go into a day program to support their mental health. Somebody might want just to get connected with a therapist. Somebody might be struggling and not know what they want. And in that case, I'm just giving them information and kind of helping them make that informed choice. This also manifests as, these programs that I'm doing for the parents, how to support your kids' mental health as they navigate middle school and high school. So that's kind of the prevention side of things. And, the cool thing about my position is that because there hasn't been a full-time mental health and substance use coordinator, there aren't strict guidelines on what I can do. And so part of my, venture out and learning what Woburn needs is to be able to fill those gaps. So if there's something I'm not thinking of as the mental health coordinator, but I see this mental health need after I start talking to people and doing the focus groups and learning about the gaps in services, I can, cover that. So I wear a lot of hats, and it's really anything related to mental health. I hopefully can support somebody, and sometimes if I can't support them, I know where to send them, and I can hopefully send them in the right direction.
Now, a term that's being thrown around, crisis response services, or CRS. Can you share with our viewers what CRS is?
So when I hear crisis response services, I think of first responders, right? So law enforcement, EMTs, firefighters. And like you said, my work in police departments, I have been a first responder. So I've been responding, I'm in the cruisers, wearing a vest, going out with police officers, and doing that clinical intervention when it comes to mental health and substance use. Well, that's not necessarily my role here in Woburn. That is kind of my background, and I think it's such a valuable service for cities to have somebody kind of collaborating with local police departments and being that resource. One, because you have somebody who's trained clinically to be providing that clinical intervention to people who might be experiencing crises, but also it frees up the police resources, right? They're not spending all their time responding to somebody who's struggling with their mental health or struggling with substance use, and that's not what they went to school for. That's not what they're trained in, right? So they can go out and do what they're trained in and spend time where they're really needed while handing off those sort of crises to me or to somebody who has that expertise. And so that's kind of what I envision as crisis services, or what you were saying. It's supporting public safety in another dimension.
On my couple of shows ago, we featured Beverly Police Officer Ted Lane, and we had Lisa Mercurio from Leahy Health, and they were talking all about the crisis and what the difference is. Again, the police do have some training, but they don't do it every day. Mental health coordinators and crisis coordinators, they do this every day, 9 to 5 for a living. That's all they do. They're very familiar with it and know the little quirks of what to do and what not to do. So it's great that more and more people are working with it.
I think it's interesting too, because now that this crisis work is becoming more and more popular and normalized, it's kind of shifting the view from law enforcement to public safety, right? So responding to these crises in a safe and beneficial way is public safety, right? Is supporting somebody who's in a crisis, whether it be addiction, whether it be mental health. You're not just enforcing the law. So that terminology is sort of shifting too, I think.
It could be something he's not committing a crime per se, but he's just having a very, very bad day, and he's not expressing it the right ways. So you can have a police officer show up who's there to keep the peace and try to get people not to hurt each other, but there's a limit to getting into the person's head that's having the problem. Your crisis coordinator knows how to speak to that person, knows a little bit more on de-escalation and how to get into that person's head and talk it out, and the results can be much more effective and the way everybody goes home that night.
Yeah, and that goes full circle too, right? Because if I'm going out and I see somebody who's struggling in crisis, I know what sort of services are out there that can support them. So instead of diffusing the situation, which police are very good at doing, diffusing the situation temporarily, but then having to respond over and over and over again to that same house or that same person, if I or another clinical personnel can come in and say, hey, how about we try this? We need to change something because what we're doing right now is not working. That can break that cycle.
And I remember many years ago when my mother was having a couple of medical issues, the police are trained to a point in first aid CPR. The police cruiser arrived first. She had a little bag with her with a little pocket mask and a couple of things. If my mother went down, she's fully capable of doing CPR. But when the EMTs arrived, they're trained to do so much more. Without law enforcement, they have the equipment, they can do the tests, they can check the blood pressure and all that. So it depends on how much somebody's trained. Nothing against the police, they have an awful lot on their plate. And trying to also work the mental health angle, that takes a lot of training. There's just so much you can put into somebody's head for training. And they try their best, and the outcome is good. By having a clinician ride along that has more training can just make the outcome so much easier. That's why on a standoff, you wonder when someone's got a gun, why it takes 5 hours for a standoff. People are like, why don't you just shoot the guy? That's not what anybody wants. Nobody wants somebody hurt. Nobody wants somebody killed. They all want to go home that night. But you have somebody that's a crisis counselor or a hostage negotiator who's had umpteen hours more training than the local police. That's why they bring in somebody trained. So everybody gets to go home. Everybody has a good outcome. And that's why crisis response services can de-escalate something right away with the additional training that they've had.
Yeah.
So things are working out pretty good so far.
Absolutely. And, Chief Rufo has been fantastic in Woburn in supporting how we integrate mental health and addiction services in the police department. Him and I are working on getting somebody there to support the police department more frequently than I can be there. And, he's welcomed me with open arms in terms of different ideas that I've had and different sorts of programs that I want to implement. He's, has me at roll calls to talk to the officers, and I have gone out with officers to different calls that are related to mental health. So it's been really fantastic working with our local police department. I just feel really lucky to have, Chief Rufo there who is willing to work with me and is open to hearing my ideas and implementing these sort of services.
That's what I like about Woburn. They're so willing to listen to new ideas. I mean, you got the older people that are older police officers like, oh, we haven't had a coordinator, we haven't had a counselor in years. What do we need them now for? Mm-hmm. And that's very few and far between because their attitudes have changed. And it's great that we do have somebody that says, okay, I welcome this extra treatment. I welcome these ideas. Mm-hmm. So it's great that all the departments can work together. I mean, the outcome is what everybody wants. They want everybody to be able to get the treatment they need. And at the end of a bad call, everybody goes home. That's all they can ask for. Everybody does their jobs, and we have a good outcome. So we have to thank, obviously, Chief Rufo for having the insight to say, let's give it a try. Let's not just go back to what we've been doing for 80 years.
Right. I mean, I've brought different providers to the police department and said, hey, I really want to introduce you to this person. And he's welcomed them with open arms. And he says, okay, bring them to roll call. Let the guys know, get a stack of their business cards. So he is, very much on top of it and, open to my ideas. One of the things that we did implement in the police department is this post-overdose follow-up, which I do with the police officers. So every time we have an overdose in Woburn, I will go out with a police officer to their house and I'll bring them one of these post-overdose kits.
Why don't we show the kit off?
Okay, so inside the kits, this is one of the first programs that I kind of put together when I first started here in Woburn. They're like little shave bags, and these are also given to police officers if they want to give them out, not at an overdose, but in other circumstances where there might be beneficial. Inside of these kits, you will find a box of Narcan, which will have 2 doses in it. There's some rubber gloves. There's a resource guide that has it has substance use resources from all different levels. So it has crisis use resources, from outpatient resources, youth resources, family support, everything that you could ask for. Inside the kit, there's also some fentanyl testing strips. For those who aren't familiar with these are for testing your drugs, basically. If you have heroin or if you have some sort of substance, it's to support safe use, right? It's a harm reduction tool. So it tells you if it might be laced with fentanyl, which is something we can touch upon after. And it has instructions in both English and Spanish on how to use the fentanyl testing strips. There's also a CPR breathing mask in here, my card, alcohol wipes. So really just some harm reduction tools that we give out to either the individual or to the family of the individual or friends. I think it can't hurt for anybody to have Narcan on hand, right? It's only going to save lives.
I notice you also have the new xylazine test strips too,
yes.
Which nobody knows unless you watch one of my episodes what xylazine is. But xylazine is now found in 8 out of 10 fentanyl. Xylazine is an animal tranquilizer. That's why the nickname on the street is Trank. It'll knock you out for hours, almost a day. but it also has some very, very bad side effects, which was on my last show. For people that wanted to watch my show. There's a show, I think it's episode 39 with Officer Ted Lane. We talked about xylazine. He's one of the few people that was able to talk about it, that knew what it was. And it's a great episode. There's like 8 out of 10 times you use fentanyl, you think you're just getting fentanyl, which is bad enough. Now you get the xylazine in there. And it shows that you can get wounds and open sores all over your body. If you put it in your arm, you can get the sore in your leg and in other spots. So it's a great show to watch, especially before lunch. There's some great graphics in there. If you don't get off the xylazine after watching the graphics, there's no hope.
And the scary thing about xylazine too is that it does not respond to Narcan. So if
Absolutely.
somebody overdoses on it, the Narcan is not going to be helpful.
Because it's not an opioid.
Right.
It's a tranquilizer. It's a completely different ball game.
Right.
And people don't understand this. They don't even know what xylazine is. I can go out and ask 100 people, and no one knows what a xylazine is. One thought it was a musical instrument. Because, oh yeah, my kid played the xylazine. Okay, whatever.
No, yeah, it's scary that these kind of new things are being laced into the substances now, and you really can't trust anything. I worked in the emergency room in Lowell, and I would have people come in struggling with some mental health or addiction issues, and they would deny any substance use. They say, oh, I just smoked a little marijuana. Like, I don't know why I'm hallucinating right now. And their talk screens would come back, and there would be fentanyl in their system, or there would be xylazine in their system. And it would scare them because they weren't opioid users. They weren't trying to take these substances, but they're laced into everything now, from your marijuana to, you can, if you buy pills off on the streets, like there's no regulation on these, obviously, so there's no way to tell really what you are putting in your body.
Well put. Now that mental health is becoming the latest epidemic, as more and more people are experiencing problems and getting diagnosed, how are we dealing with people that are afraid to admit that the stigma that they have a problem? I mean, I've had it on NAMI on my show, which is also a great resource for those seeking help. Now that you just put a drug on a mental illness class at the beginning of March, how did that go? How did that new training go that I missed?
Oh, so that's the mental health first aid course that we did. Yeah, that was fantastic. So I'm a trainer for mental health first aid, which is an international program, actually. It started in Australia and then was brought over to the United States and is basically certifies people to be called a mental health first aider. So the course that we did was a small course because it was the first one I was teaching in Woburn, and I would say it was a huge success, mostly because the people who came were very engaged, they participated, they asked questions, they really took on the activities, and you could tell they wanted to be there. This program, the course is to teach individuals how to support either youth or adults if they suspect that they're struggling with mental health or substance use.
I know a lot of people missed out because it was scheduled for the Thursday of that big snowstorm. So they rescheduled. I wasn't able to make the new date, which was a shame. I really would have liked to have attended it. So more classes will be coming on. Now you have a very, very ambitious schedule ahead of you. What else would you like our viewers to know? Anything you want, you can say. If we don't like it, don't worry, we'll beep you out.
Okay. Well, I would like to say that my doors are always open. So my phone number, my email address are online, and I am excited to learn about Woburn, and I'm excited to learn about the people of Woburn. So if anybody would be interested in chatting with me more about what their experience is with substance use or mental health in the city, to share stories, to let me know what their opinions are, my door is always open. All of these programs that we have going on, the fun run, the mindfulness event, the Narcan trainings, those are all open to the public, and all of them have been free of charge so far. There's no finances as an obstacle because I want to make this accessible for everybody. I don't think you should, money should be a barrier for learning how to support people or to participate in these programming. So, like I said, my door's always open, and I'm just excited to continue my work here in Woburn.
Before we close, I have a little something. It'll be up on our screen, so you have to try to read this little thing. Mackenzie, thank you so much for appearing.
Oh, thank you.
You didn't get one of those last time.
No, I didn't. Now I get to hang it in my office.
Frank's going to want one.
Yeah, and he's going to be jealous.
Might have to have him come back.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Upcoming update. Obviously, I haven't been here for several months for a medical illness. I'm back. I was suffering from pneumonia. Literally spent 43 days in between 3 hospitals. You tell my voice is still a little raspy from it, but I'm recovering. I'm doing great, and I will be having more of these shows coming down the line. So, I would like to thank our guest, Mackenzie Dezieck, for appearing today. As always, thank you for watching. Please share this program with your social media friends. If you or someone you know is suffering from a substance abuse disorder, contact the Mass Substance Use Helpline, and their number is 1-800-327-5050. Mackenzie's number will also appear at the bottom of our screen and throughout the show. For people in Woburn, you can contact her directly, and her contact information will be throughout the show, as you've seen. If you are thinking about suicide, you can speak to a specialist at the new number 988, not 911, 988. If you're having a mental illness issue, you can contact NAMI, Central Middlesex, and their phone number is 781-982-3318, which we'll probably throw out throughout the show. The show can be seen on a rotating basis on Woburn Public Media stations and on demand on their website and on YouTube. As also, thank you to the staff of Woburn Public Media Center for making this show possible. Please enjoy our closing theme, Rise Above the Noise by Fireheart, through the credits for important contact information. So watch all the way to the music stops. There's some phone numbers you might want to see and where you can go for help. For America in Crisis, Breaking the Cycle of Addiction, my name is David Hunt. Thank you for watching, and I'm back.
It is what we bear. The whispers that I hear behind my back are those who never lost a child, a friend, and so they lack a sense of loss, a peace that's gone with no return. Above the noise is how we cope, above the noise is how we learn. The most important things in life I found comes deep within the heart, the purest sound of those who won the fight. Now they found a life that's true, a life so rich above the ground. We are people who care, listen to the sound. Rise above the noise in the air. The sound not heard is what we bear. We are people who care. Listen to the sound. Rise above the noise in the air. The sound not heard is what we bear. The sound not heard